Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? It is day 30 of RPG A Day 2019. I am tired. Has nothing to do with RPG A Day. Maybe a little bit. Been a tiring month. Anyhow, our word for today is connection. And the first thing that sprung to mind is connection with other gamers. But I've noticed that I've had that kind of come up as a theme over and over again in RPG A Day in one way, shape, or form. And so while that's a great way to look at the topic, I've already kind of talked about that. And of course, the connection I feel with a lot of the friends I've made, excuse me, is very profound. And so I don't want to belittle that. But there's a couple other things that came to me about connection that are also really, really important. The first one is connection to the fiction itself, to the setting, to the premise, the whole idea. And while things like the fantastical are great, sometimes that can leave us, it can be a little hard to connect to the setting. And once it's hard to connect to the setting or the premise or what's actually going on, then it can be a little harder as players to act, to feel comfortable in knowing what we're seeing, in knowing what should and shouldn't be there, in kind of acting and acting natural as our characters. And sometimes as a game master, it can be a little bit difficult too, as far as having to explain too much or creating things, or sometimes it's hard to connect to that setting as well. And I think I might have talked about this in another during another prompt of RPG a day, but that's an important connection right there. And I've certainly had this experience lately when we've switched gears and started playing This World with a Twist, and we're playing an 1890s, the Leagues of Cthulhu game. That instantly all the players, they knew what things should be there. We were talking about the game afterwards, and they were talking about the ability to kind of visualize things, and because you kind of know what that period of time was like, you know what Earth is like, a little bit different. But the other kind of connection that is probably even more important than that, at least to me, is connection with the character themselves. And this is something I've talked about in the past as well. Paul Sega has this PDF. It's like 6 or 7 pages long. It's called "I Know How to Free Them." It's kind of an exercise rather than a game, although there is kind of a game implied in it as well. I'll probably link it to the blog post of this. So if you follow my link to the blog post, then you can find Paul Sega's thing. And it's probably like $2 to buy the thing. It's pretty cool, and it asks you a bunch of questions, not too many, about the character. And one of them is, something that there's a link, a connection between you and the character. Something about them is, you're the same way. And, I'm not talking about like playing an avatar or this idea that like everybody you play is really you. You can certainly play that way. That's definitely not my preferred way to play. But it's been my experience that the characters that I felt the strongest about, I've had some kind of connection. We had something in common. It wasn't everything about them was just like me, but there was something where I could identify with them. I had a connection with them. And that little bit, that little kind of connection, that one touchstone that I had with them allowed me to kind of jump in with both feet into that character, because I really like to play and try to have an experience as if I were the character, as if the character were real, as if the scenario, the situation they were in were real. And I like to try to figure out, well, what would they do? What would they feel like? I start to like to be able to not hypothesize about that, but just kind of feel what they're feeling, and acting the way they're going to act. And it can be interesting because I can watch what the character does. Sometimes it's almost as if I'm, just simply watching it and have nothing to do with it. I can watch what their responses are, you know, and sometimes I can watch my response to what they're doing and what the internal state of the character is, and that can be really interesting. Sometimes I find some things out about myself, you know, um, by doing that. So to me, some kind of connection with the character that I'm playing is vital. Because if it doesn't exist, then it's kind of flat and two-dimensional and boring. And I usually end up kind of organically creating one anyway. So once I have a connection with the character, then that can bring the rest of the game world to life. And then the scenario becomes important. Everything about it becomes important because I feel this strong sense of identification with the character in some way. It's pretty cool stuff. Take it easy, kids. I'll talk to you for day 31.